It's 6 o'clock, and I'm calling this regular meeting of the Plainfield Charter Township Board to order. Is that? Yeah. Okay. Can I get a motion to nominate the President Pro Tem for the evening?
I nominate our President Pro Tem for the evening.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Susan?
Thank you. And a pledge of allegiance will be led by Jack Hagedorn. Please join us in prayer.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for the freedom and the ability for us to meet tonight together. Thank you that in spite of the diverse lives and opinions, we share a unity in you. Thank you for the staff. We pray for those who have lost loved ones because of it, to do our best for the township. All this we ask.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the
Evening. Seeing a motion would be in order. Mr. Hagedorn? Thank you. The first bill.
We should make Jen do it. See the logo? It was last March or so. The township board decided to, from there, you said staff go operate this thing and see how it works for this first year. Ken, to get the operations workable for everything. I want to hear about their experiences or observations. But we started a weekend. And then on those 3 holiday weekends, Memorial Day, 4th of July, prime season, when it was the best weather, et cetera, a typical weekend for them would be like 4 to 8 or right out front. So you go in there and you say, okay, sheriff's deputies here. I think just set a good tone, good presence, because it's important for us to make. So we think that made a big difference. We had a lot of people coming to the park this year. I think you mentioned an email recently too. This person also donated half happened. So that, I think, was just a couple weeks ago we got that. So it was a good way to kind of end this. We're clean, stocked, ready to go, even on the weekends. They also opened, since we got the automatic gates, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we had shortly after dark, at dusk, after we closed. That worked out well. We didn't have any problems equal to or less than what we've had in years past. And again, the sheriff's department's here if we have any questions. What we did was add the automatic gates. As you know, we got that approved, the thing working, programmable to open up and close for us. So we got a great price at that. We budgeted did a lot of changing of the signs. You may recall a lot of the things start out with no. Too, working with our insurance company, put up a lot of swim at your own risk. Everything that we've done, implemented this past year, so.
Thank you very much. Any comments on this subject?
To this, there were a few things that we wanted to accomplish. One of the biggest ones from my standpoint was financial. We spent how much that it actually cost us to have lifeguards. And some of that from a liability standpoint to do a swim at your own risk, then doing it appropriately. We used Ellis, which is an excellent company, but there's a significant cost to that. You have to train your staff to a certain level. On top of that, we had to keep a certain level of lifeguards at this costly too, because obviously the revenue is not the same. So looking at other things we could change as well, and one that opened longer during the day in the summer. When we had, you can use the entire park all day long through the summer and as well. Morning swim, that was not something we could do before last year. We've heard from other residents, we did have some concerns about if we don't have as many staff in the park with patrolling the park. Looking at back to the financials, a little charges that may change yet, some things that may get added. One thing that law enforcement patrols, the way we accounted for that may have shown up as general account. It all comes out of the general fund, but which line item of the general fund? Money we spent more than we took in. So that's why the numbers are red. So when you have bars that go down, this is a negative. Any of our parks. So you wouldn't expect to make money when you have to maintain them. It's a public amount. Taxpayers does it cost to run a park like Versluis? So we've been tracking over the 3 prior years. Now 2020 was an odd year with COVID. We had a very short season. Insurers past what we took in revenue approached, and even when we end up being closer to 80,000 when it's all said and done in terms of total expenses. But you can see us as well. This is preliminary. We'll close the books later. Part-time wages really goes to the lifeguards. It's the lifeguards and the supervisor. $500 in wages from January, February timeframe. This was having internet access in the park to take credit cards, right? You need tallied those columns up down here so you can see the year, and then revenues were often, or just from the lifeguard standpoint alone, we were subsidizing lifeguard than we had in the past. That shows up in contracted services. In the past, we had done, that will probably double, so it'll probably be closer to 10,000 when we adjust the accounting for where we charged all of our law enforcement. But even with that, you'll see that in the red here, this is how much we spent more than the revenue we took in. This is the average of the 3 years. How much less than the average last year. So about 43,000. Even if we adjust up the law enforcement, we're still well above 30,000 less than a normal year. So from a financial standpoint, what we anticipated did happen, that we would spend less money at Versluis. And even with that, we've been able to offer expanded hours at the beach, expanded availability. And so we're not aware of any issues with overcrowding at the beach. And of course, that can be extremely weather dependent. Holidays are always going to be more popular. 4th of July, obviously, is going to have about the best predictable weather and time off for people, and that's usually our busiest time. But we're not aware that there were really any overcrowding incidents, and our parking lot really limits that too. There's only a little over 100 spots in that parking lot, so when the parking lot's full, there's some natural control on how full the park can get. So with that, I think the only other, I didn't know if any of our law enforcement folks wanted to speak. We also have an opportunity to introduce some of our newer faces to the township as well. So maybe if all three gentlemen want to come in and just do a quick introduction in what your new role is with the township.
There you go.
Should turn green.
Hear me? That better? We also have Deputy Craig Holbrook, who's the community police officer for Plainfield Township. And I'll let them introduce themselves, but I will highlight just some statistics on the parks. Bill asked me to run some numbers, not only for last year, but the last 2 years prior, so 2019 and 2020. And virtually, they're almost identical in terms of calls for service during those 3 years. So we didn't see any outliers last year. And what we did see, though, was a number of patrol assignments, which correlates to our officers actually be assigned there. It didn't increase the calls or decrease them. So on average in 2019, we had a total of 11 calls for service. However, we did have 4 patrol assignments that year. So if you take those patrol assignments out, it equates to 7 calls for service. 2020, identical, 7 calls for service. And then last year, when you subtract our patrol assignments, we had a total of, I believe it was 8 calls for service. So virtually identical calls in terms of numbers. So that's what we like to see. We don't want to see variations. So any further questions on calls for service at the park?
What would be included in a call for service?
A variety of them. Some so I'll just highlight some of the calls that we experienced last year. One of them was a lost and found report, so it's very minor. We had 2 traffic stops, so those are officers engaging in some type of traffic enforcement. It could have been speed. I don't have exactly what the traffic stop, but that was a self-initiated activity based on the patrol officer. We had 1 drunk driving arrest. And again, that likely originated on the public roadway and the traffic stop ended there.
We can talk about it if you want, because I was on a majority of these.
Perfect, yeah.
So the lost and found property, it was actually a boat that came from, I'm sorry, is it a boat shop or dive shop or something right there on Northland? It was a boat that kind of drifted off down towards the park. So as far as call for service, that was just a boat that wandered down. That drug driving arrest actually stemmed from that triathlon. So somebody that showed up to the triathlon in their vehicle and was under the influence. So that wasn't necessarily an issue with the park necessarily. There was a medical incident that we hopped onto. It was nothing police related. We just went to it. There was a domestic argument that we went to that I actually went to that one. And it was just a report of people arguing in the park. By the time we got there, they were gone. It was calmed down, so there was no big situation there. And then there was a couple liquor license checks. So from the previous years, yeah, there was nothing crazy that happened, and I was there for half of these incidents, and there was nothing to worry about in my eyes when it came to
Thank you.
issues at the park.
Question?
Yeah,
So what you are saying basically is there were no calls from the condo units that had a problem with trespassing prior to the year?
So these are calls at the park itself. There were separate calls from the condo association. There were people that came over fishing, couple boating incidents. Those we handled in that was a separate address from the park, so those calls weren't generated at the park. These are the calls generated at the park. But yes, there were those, and we had a couple meetings with the condo association to talk about those, and we went through ways to remedy it and trying to come up with solutions.
Thank you.
any more questions from the board on the, oh, Kathy?
Were those calls more than they had been in the past from the condo association?
That I would have to look into. I'm not sure if there were more calls this year than there were in 2020 or 2019, but I know it has been an ongoing issue, and it's been something that we've been working on at least since I've been in this position and prior to try to figure out what's going on with the rights of the water and ways to fix a situation with better signage or more presence.
So as you were there patrolling or making your presence, just your general comments as to, looks like it was going great and it was more a PR standpoint than it was correcting anyone that was there?
Sure. I didn't really see too many issues. So I know there was a lot of people worried that there was going to be unwanted people committing crimes, everything in the park. I didn't get that vibe from people when I was there. Everybody that was at the park, every time I went there, seemed that they were just out there enjoying the park with their family, not out there to commit crimes.
Thank you. Bill, do you have any questions?
No, but I have a question for Bill over here. I like that idea of the donation for the park from the guy that was swimming in it. And I like to go down fishing down there. Did they have any good fishing down there yet this year?
Ice fishing or when they were fishing during the summer?
Yeah, but why would this sort of spread the word that we accept donations to help us to replant the walleye and the thing there? And I think you'd get lots of takers on putting in on the pot, and then we could put it in, and then we could talk with the people on the other side of the lake. They have to stay on their side because we're replenishing on this side. But in any event, that might be a good suggestion for us, you know.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jack?
One thing, I do remember Cameron's estimate on the savings, and came out pretty much like you said, $50,000, so that's good.
Frank? Anything? Okay.
I have one more if I could. So are we going to continue at the same level, the sheriff?
I was just going to ask that question. This year, we didn't know how many hours to assign the sheriff to the park. Was that the right amount? Could you have been there fewer hours? Or should we consider longer work shifts during certain times in the summer, like those 3 holidays? Oh, Bill.
Well, maybe I can help a little bit, because I'm the one who organized it with them, and we kind of schedule when they're out there. As we kind of evolved, since the very beginning, we had them out there for more time than what we needed them. And we based that on their observation of peak times there. It's like they were there, gosh, to start with early. I can't remember what the time was. But like on a Saturday, we decided let's not have them get out there till maybe noon or later on certain days, because park didn't start to get busy, so we didn't need to pay them for that time. Unless the board directs otherwise, or Cameron, I plan on meeting with Ben now and going over the same schedule, similar schedule to what we had last summer, because it worked out well. And again, typical weekend will be like 4 to 8 or 5 to 9 on a Friday, Saturday, and that Sunday. And then holidays are a couple times extra. That worked well for us. So that's less directed. Otherwise, that's what I plan to organize with them for this summer as well.
Any other comments from board members? I happened to stop by 2 times during the summer. One time was an interesting experience, which all of us have probably had, where there was a need to change toilet paper, and we didn't have a key. So that was the major issue of that day. And I did read later on that it got solved, so now you know where the key is. And the other time was nothing eventful at all. As a matter of fact, I sort of wandered around, and from a different perspective of standing next to you, it was very, very family oriented. Families were having picnics, and other people were in the water with their children, and what I saw was probably what all of us had hoped that we would see. Any other comments on this subject? Well, again, a big thank you from all of Plainfield Township for the work that you did and that contributed to the success of the program. Thank you very much. And Bill, same thanks to your department, and Cameron and Jen, or anybody else who had anything to do. You might call the first year a good experiment.
We need to recognize another law enforcement
Oh, yes,
officer
we do.
who
I'm
was trying
sorry.
to stay anonymous in the back of the room, but E.J. Johnson had a lot to do with the working through issues with the condo association as well. Last week with the sheriff's department?
Last day. Well, congratulations, and you will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, very much. Again, on behalf of all of us, thank you very, very much. The next agenda item is consideration of groundwater application to keep a private well. Cameron, would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely, and we have our applicant here tonight. Good to see you, Tom. So we've done a number of these, right? So you're somewhat familiar with the process. When we put this groundwater use control ordinance in place, we allowed for an appeal process, and it has kind of a two-step approach. First is to work through Eagle and Kent County Health Department, and if both agencies sign off that the keeping the well is not going to be a detriment to public health or to environmental health, they will sign off, and then Rick Soleil is basically granted permission to give them an exception to closing their private well. If either of those agencies has an issue, then the applicant has the ability to appeal to this body, to the Township Board. And so that's what we have tonight. You've seen a few of those come through. And so in the past, the way we've approached these has been to look at what is the potential harm of keeping the well. Again, this is for outdoor irrigation use, not for home use. But this is one of those that has been entirely free of PFAS. I appreciate our counterparts at Eagle and the Health Department, but sometimes, in our opinion, they do get a little bit overzealous, and we think that this is one of those times where their approach to monitoring these is just a touch overzealous. The particular denial in this case by the Health Department this time, and either agency has had their issues in the past, whether there's PFAS in the area but not in that well, or in this case, the Health Department noted that I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Denial. Agency recommendations, there we go. So the Health Department thinks it should be abandoned because the well does not meet the current well construction code, and per the well record and the age of the well, it is likely not grouted. Can't confirm that because they don't know, but So, again, they're talking about a health hazard, but we're talking about a well that's going to be used for irrigation purposes. So this is where we think the health department gets a little bit overzealous. And so the recommendation of our attorney is to allow for this appeal. And so that's a recommendation from Rick and myself. And Tom, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
I think you pretty much summed it up. My well's tested non-detect for PFOS since 2017. The latest test was 2021. Once was by
Tom, I'm going to have you step over to the microphone and give us your name and address. Thank you.
My name is Tom Sepkowski. I'm like probably a 29-year resident of Belmont. 7147 Packer Drive is my address. I live right on the corner of Packer Woods, so I'm on a public road and a private road as well. Like I said, the well tested clean on 3 different occasions by 3 different test labs, one of which I paid for myself. It was a strange coincidence that a couple days after, we were not in the test zone initially, but my wife was concerned. So she said, hey, let's get a private company and test it. And then 3 days later, we became part of the test area. So didn't get my $600 back, which was okay, because I thought, this way I'll test the tester type thing. We'll see if the results are the same from GZA as they are. And they were both non-detect, and the results were very close. Of course, they're talking about trillionths of a part per billion, or part per trillion. Whatever. The health department came. I'm part of several PFOS blood studies, and my blood doesn't have any more PFOS in it than the general population does, who doesn't live in the area. So that was a good sign. And then they also tested the water again, and that was March of 2021. Again, non-detect. So, and as Cam stated, I'm only going to use it for irrigation, and I have a swimming pool. That it's nice to be able to fill it with that rather than have to, And I am completely willing to get municipal water, just to avoid having to do the softening salt and all that good
Sure.
stuff. So I think that pretty much sums it up.
Wonderful.
But I
Thank
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for Tom?
One of the reasons is that periodically this well, after we grant this, would be tested to make sure that it stays that way, because that's the whole object of what we're doing.
That's correct, Bill. The rationale is we need to make sure that the PFAS plumes haven't moved, and so this particular well doesn't appear to be in a direct line from a plume, but some of the others that we've granted are closer to known plumes, and so there is a testing requirement periodically just to ensure that the non-detect condition remains the same, and so that's a condition with all of these.
Right. I might also mention to the man, tell your kids to keep their mouths shut when they swim.
Oh,
My kids are in their 20s, so they don't swim as much as they do. Oh, in the pool, I see what you're saying.
thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Jack?
I want to hand it to Rick Soleil because he's taken the responsibility every year to check these tests to make sure they come in. And as we get more and more people that we're allowing to have these wells, it'll be more and more work on his part. So I want to hand it to him, give him a hand for that.
I agree. Thank you. Any other comments? A motion would be in order.
I move to approve the resolution granting the appeal for private exception at 7147 Packer Woods Drive as presented.
Second.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Pfaff for the second on that one.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Hagedorn,
Yes?
Mrs. Morrow,
Yes.
Ms. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Pfaff,
Yes.
Ms. Postma, yes.
The next subject is a presentation on our 3-year road maintenance plan. Cameron, are you representing the road commission?
I am tonight, yes. I didn't ask Jerry to join us tonight on short notice. So we've taken this approach for a few years now of I guess to back up a little bit, before, say, 4 years ago, we did a year-by-year approach, and it really is a poor way of doing financial planning as well as planning for what work we're going to do here. So we started doing a 3-year projection of what roads to be fixed. So we did a 3-year plan. We're actually in the 4th year of a 3-year plan. Makes sense, right? So it's a rolling 3-year plan. We just add a new layer every year. So looking at what the Road Commission has presented to us as their recommendation for a new 3-year plan, we have the first 2 years, which were on the prior year's plan, 3-year plan, but they are adjusted a little bit. And this is one thing that the Road Commission, as much as we like to look out 3 years, one thing they can't predictably anticipate is how much the repairs will cost. And we all know costs for a lot of things have gone up recently. So they've actually had to scale back some of the 2022 plan. In particular, and there's 2 reasons why they chose this area. One is the type of work they're doing and the cost associated, but also the fact that we do have some water work that's going to happen. So they've bumped part of the Plainfield area to a 2023 improvement, largely because we do have a number of homes in this area that need to be connected, and so we will have larger trucks going through. And with the way that we, not us, but the Road Commission contracts out this work, they look for best pricing, and what they can give is best flexibility. So they can't confirm that there won't be a conflict between road work and water work. And so with that, the Road Commission felt it was best to push off this neighborhood. And I'm going to duck the blows because I know there's a couple board members that live in this neighborhood. But it'll be pushed off to 2023 to ensure that all the water work is done first, that all that heavy machinery is out of there before a shiny new blacktop goes on top. So that part was moved. You'll see basically if it's in blue, it's some form of improvement for 2022. One thing this map doesn't do as nicely is show what kind of work will be done. And a good case in point, we had roads like Chandler that we did water work a couple years ago now. And so there's some new pavement in that area, although it's certainly not all freshly paved. So it will receive a different kind of treatment than some of these other streets that might need a heavier reconditioning. So there's different phrases they'll use. They'll say a chip seal, they'll say a mill and fill, where they grind up the top layer and then put a nice fresh top layer on. And then they usually refer to something more extensive as a full reconstruct. And that's where they pull out all the asphalt, both the top and the base layer. Usually in that case, they'll work with some of their base gravel and sand to make sure they've got a good road bed, and then reapply both layers of asphalt on top of that. Obviously, there's different costs to each treatment. As much as possible to extend dollars, they'd like to do the lighter treatments, but there's areas where that doesn't make sense. If you're gonna put a cheaper treatment on something that already has a lot of potholes, you're probably gonna not be too long before you get a lot of potholes again. You probably have something happening either in the base layer or even below that needs to be addressed. So that's some of the logic in what roads the Road Commission recommends. There's a few factors. The biggest factor is, and it's a little hard to see on this map right now. I don't know if I can make it a little bigger for you. I'll do my best here. We'll zoom in a little bit. You'll see that some areas have this lavender color. That comes from our engineers, and this is an indication of a future water project or sewer project. So there's some reason to avoid resurfacing these areas because we have something planned either for water or sewer. For us, largely that's water right now. It's a lot of water improvements. This is something that we've got planned for this year. We need to do some water main extensions to have a second connection into the Belmont tank, or the Booth tank, sorry. And so there'll be work here. That doesn't mean the Road Commission was thinking about doing these roads this year, but we have that as a first step. We look at what utility work is planned, and so that comes from Prine and Newhoff and goes to the Road Commission. And basically, as a don't don't suggest these roads because we're gonna be bumping into each other if you do. Or we don't want to improve roads, and a good case in point is the Hills and Dales neighborhood. You'll see that most, but not all of these streets are lavender, and the ones that are not are ones that we have done a full water and sewer main reconstruction in recent years. And so from a utility standpoint, those are in great shape, but all those around it still need work. And when we did those, we put a fresh repave of the street above it. So those streets are in good shape, but the ones around it need work. So we don't want the road commission recommending streets that we're gonna rip up in 2, 3, 4 years and put a new water and sewer main in. So that would be not the best use of our dollars. So we've marked those, then the road commission goes in and looks at the conditions, what they think is the best return for the dollar in terms of treatments, and puts the recommendations together. One other one to note here, this is also a utility project, the one that's in a different shade of blue. This is the project that we had bid out for last year, and the contractor gave us better pricing by pushing it off till this year. So this is going to happen as a utility project, and then on the back end, then the road commission will come in and do a full repave there. So that's a project that's certainly gonna happen this year. All the rest of the blue, they will bid out, and as far as our dollars take them, they will do as much of the remaining blue as they can. Some down there, some up here. And then obviously there's the future years, green and red. And so that's, the blue and the green were on the last year's plan. The red is the new addition. A lot of it working around our utility work, which is why there's been a massive shift to south of the river. Part of it's their older roads, but we're also trying to not get in the way of other utility work going on up here. And so that's why you'll see Belmont Avenue is a good example. The road commission did the northern part of it and stopped right as we were going to start our water main work. That was a couple years ago where they repaved that. And so now there's a section here, and this is a county primary road, so that's why it's not on our to-do list. They'll come back and repave this area at some point now that we're nearly done with the utility work in the area.
And what's the light green?
The light green, that one, it's kind of almost a bluish green. That is under the White Pine Trail, and that is a sewer project. There's a big sewer trunk line underneath there. And so one thing to point out, just because something is marked as utility doesn't mean we're gonna rip it all up and replace it. Sometimes it's as simple as doing an inspection and lining areas that have started to corrode. So some of these, and West River Drive would be a good example of that. A lot of this is not ripping out, and that would be a really substantial project because the main along West River is quite a substantial trunk line. It's a lot more of doing inspecting and fixing problems as we find them. And so there'll be a lot more of that type of work. So you'll see some of those areas too.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Oh, excuse me. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Questions or comments from the board members? Let's start with Frank.
I'm good, thank you.
Jack?
About a year ago, or even before that, I took my bike down Childsdale, and I noticed that there were patches upon patches on that road in Childsdale. And I thought Tom was going to be at this board meeting, and I wondered about, I asked him about Childsdale and whether he could find an answer to me about that, and found out he's going to be in Florida, so obviously he's not. So coincidentally with that, and I didn't know this, we had a letter about Childsdale from Art Spalding, and I wondered if you would give your answer to us about that letter, because I know, Cameron, you did answer it, and then I'd like to make some comments after that.
So Childsdale is one that the road commission has certainly been on their watch list. I've talked to Jerry Byrne specifically about this road and mentioned, please keep a close eye on that. He has looked at it, and so I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's a little hard to see, especially if you're online. So if we look at Childsdale, we've got the stretch from 10 Mile down, and then it connects on down here to Cuts Hill. Different stretches have different needs. Some are in better shape than other areas. Even looking at piece by piece, Jerry's response is, yes, it's something that certainly needs attention, but some of the work that needs to be done is a bigger reconstruct than just pulling off pavement and repaving. There's areas where the road is narrow and there's not a lot of shoulder. The road commission really would rather do a better rebuild on it than do slap some new asphalt on it and still have some of the problems that are involved with the width of the roadway and the width of the shoulder. The problem is that's a very expensive project, and if we take on that project now, that means a lot of the other work won't be able to be accomplished. It might even be a bigger project. If you're talking about the entire road, it might be more than 1 year's allocation to do the entire stretch of Childsdale. So it may need to be broken up and doing in segments. So it's something on their list, something that they are very closely watching. They look at the township as a whole and try to stretch our dollars as best as possible to keep all the roads at the highest possible condition or make the most use of the dollars. At this time, they're not recommending it, but they recognize that it's something that is going to need substantial rework in the future.
And I get that we have limited dollars to work with. I guess my concern is if we don't have enough, we're putting $750,000 along with their money. And if we don't have enough money in these 3 years, what is to say we're not going to have enough money 3 years from now? It would seem to me that we're just kicking the can down the road and that at some point, we're just going to have to bite the bullet.
You're absolutely right. At some point, we will have to spend the funds on this road, and it will not be cheap because it will need some areas of reconstruction. At this time, the road commission doesn't think that's our best use of our dollars, but at some point, it will be what we need to do. So you're absolutely right. It will need to be done. The other map that we need to look at, and part of this, is the PACER rating. And this is what we've been watching for a while. We have a lot of red on here. So you'll see Childsdale is most of it is red, except for the very southern portion of it. And some of it is different shades of red. We've got, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, try not to make you motion sick here. So there's really 2 shades of red, and then really more of an orange, and then yellow, and then gets into the green. And so if you're looking at the deepest red, that's a PACER rating of 1 or 2, which is the worst condition. As you look around the township, we've got a lot of red. We've had a lot of red for a while. That's nothing new. What we've been able to do is turn a lot of roads from, naturally a lot of roads will go into worse condition, right, if we do nothing. What we've been able to do is stretch our dollars and do some pavement preservation and turn some roads that were fair, yellow, into green, good. And so that's really improved the condition of a lot of our roads. But we do have a number of roads that are in poor condition as displayed on this map. Some of them are in the 3-year work plan. You'll see this neighborhood, the Blythefield Hills neighborhood, and then some of these neighborhoods south of the river. But there's some of these that are also not in the 3-year work plan. I don't believe this neighborhood is, or any of these neighborhoods as well. So it's a challenge. It really is a challenge of addressing all the needs. The road commission has taken very much an approach that if we're only ever addressing the worst first, we'll never get on top of the problem. And so that's why they've felt strongly about really addressing pavement preservation and getting on top of a lot of the roads that were fair and turning them into good to extend that life. And then, yes, we will have to address some of the worst as well. And the good and the bad is we're starting to get more to that point where you don't see a lot of yellow anymore. We've taken care of most of the fair roads and turned them into good roads again. Some of those that are getting into be a lighter green, they may recommend a light treatment to them just to get them back into a darker shade of green. But we're getting to the point where more expensive treatments are needed for a lot of these roads. And so it will bog down our progress, and that, I think, really feeds into the projection chart the road commission also provided for us. I asked them, how are we doing in terms of the money that we are budgeting? Because when we looked at this a few years ago, we asked them, how much do we need to be making forward progress on our road condition? And they gave us something very similar to this and had recommended, and now this is total dollars, not just our share. So 1.5 million would be what we're spending today. It's our 750,000 matched with theirs. Their recommendation is if we could get into that range, we would start to see incremental improvement of our road system. We would have to keep at that, and the more we did, the better, the faster we would see improvement. But I really think that's what you're seeing in the numbers here. We see some more dramatic improvement over the next couple of years as we treat roads that need a cheaper surface resurfacing to get them into a good condition. Then after the next couple of years, we start digging into roads, no pun intended, that need a lot more work. Roads that will need a full reconstruct as opposed to just another surface layer. That gets a lot more expensive per mile, which means we can't do as many miles, which means there's other roads that are gonna be sliding down in scale. So it's gonna look like we're flat to maybe even possibly declining for a couple of years because of that. Their model shows a slight increase at the end. I think that's too far out to really know at this point. There's so much that can happen with pricing. You know, in what we're seeing right now with inflation, is that something that's gonna persist? Is that something that's kind of a blip and is done and we're gonna normalize? No one knows. And so yeah, that will matter a lot too.
Frank?
Could I?
Oh, I'm
finish?
sorry.
I still remain very concerned about Childsdale, especially from Crows to the river. So much so that I had initially thought I would like to table this, but I'm willing to vote for it, provided we can get the road commission to come here and explain to us their plans for Crows. Could we do that?
Absolutely, Jerry would be happy to talk with us. So I'll invite them out and we can talk through some of these
Good.
issues.
Good, thank you.
Frank, did you have some comments?
Well, I mean, it's easy for us in a cold weather state to, part of living in a cold weather state is you're going to have roads like this. We have a really good plan. I think we need to trust the experts in the field. I think when somebody, not you, Jack, I'm not referring to you. I just want to say that. But when somebody can always lobby for the area they live in. But to me, that's a conflict of interest. You know, it's just, you're lobbying for this, where you live. So I think we have to be careful about that. And these people are paid to be experts in the field. And I think that's, they've earned our trust. We have a good relationship with them. And I think we should go with their recommendations. And we have been very, boy, I don't want to say progressive, but proactive is the word I'm looking for. We have been proactive when we've added, you know, I know since I've been here, you know, that we've added a lot more to the roads. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Bill, do you have any comments?
Well, this seems to me that Childsdale originally wasn't too good of a road when they put it in because of its topography or the roller coaster situation there. Boy, that's a hill you can go over and get a wee sensation out. And that's a question is how well that's been holding up. But of course, again, they are experts. I do trust the Kent County Road Commission and their leaders there. They're very good to work with. Just have to do the best we can with the type of roads we have, with the type of topography we have to keep them going good. And but the fact that we're kicking in, was it 750,000 a year, means that we're working at it, that's for sure. We just can't kick in $1,750,000 because then taxes have to go way up. And so we're doing the best we can with that right now.
Kathy, do you have any, I'm sorry?
If I could add to Bill's comment too, there's a limit to how much we can afford, and then the road commission has been very good about matching funds, but they say there's a limit to their ability to do that as well. At a certain point, because we're not the only township that's been focusing more on our roads, they've got to match each one. At this point, when they do that, it gets into pulling money away from primary roads. And so when you look back at the map, I'll pull up the road rating map because that's the clearest example. Any road you see on here that isn't a color is not the township's responsibility, which makes it someone else's, right? So you've got 131, which is a federal highway, that's a state highway, state responsibility for funding. You've got county primary roads, so Post and Belmont and West River Drive, those are all county primary roads. That's a separate pot of money to them in their financials. They pull from it to match funds because they're trying to encourage all of us, all the townships to do this. But there's a limit to how much they can do that as well. So they've been able to do a 50-50 match, but there's a point in time where they won't be able to continue to do that. And if we, as Bill suggested, if we all find a way to increase our own funding, they may not be able to match it at 50-50 forever.
Thank you.
Unless we can get them to get the damn roads taken care of, if you know what I mean, from state level.
Kathy, do you have comments?
I'm good, thank you.
Kathy?
All set.
Thank you. A
I have
motion-
one,
Pardon me?
I have one more question.
Okay, sure.
Cameron, I know that at least there's a bill in the, with the federal government to give infrastructure money. Do we have any money with the county that can contribute to roads at this point?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There's a lot of money flowing downhill, right, from DC to the states to the counties. The way state of Michigan's road finances is set up, and I know you're familiar with this, it's something called Act 51. It means that in our instance, that money will stop with the county. It does not trickle down to a township. That's just the way it's structured. It will go to cities because they're responsible for their own roads, not the road commission. But in a township, the road commission would get the funding and has the responsibility. I think to Jack's question, will there be additional funds? Depending on what they get, we might see that. Part of it, they may use that to support the 50-50 match that they have been doing, putting more money into their primary roads that they've been pulling back from a little bit to make sure the 50-50 is there. But if enough funds come, we may see some of that as well. I do notice from time to time, there are roads that weren't on our work plan that all of a sudden get some type of treatment. And so the road commission does, they just consider it maintenance, and then all of a sudden a maintenance looks a whole lot more like a new layer of asphalt after a while. But they have treated areas that we were not able to fund, were not on our work plan, and so they have used additional funding. And I'm sure not just in Plainfield, in every township they address areas of need. So yeah, I'm hopeful that some of that money can go towards boosting some of our road network.
Thank you. My comments aren't specifically related to the roads, but they're related to the $750,000 that we're finding each year. And I think the credit goes to Cameron and department heads and people who are using our other funds and their budgeted amounts very, very carefully, and replacing vehicles when vehicles are ready to be replaced. I think we've got one with 150,000 miles on it that's on the agenda for tonight, that we find that our department heads are very cautious and careful with the budgeted amount that they have, and that the credit for $750,000 may be our vote up here, but in fact, it's a management situation that I think we're very blessed with, not only Cameron's leadership, but the department heads working very hard to stay within their budgets. A motion would be in order.
I move to approve the updated 3-year local road maintenance plan in partnership with the Kent County Road Commission.
Second.
Second from Ms. Beatty.
A roll call vote, Ms. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Hagedorn?
Yes.
Mrs. Merrill?
Yes,
Mr. Pfaff?
Yes.
Ms. Postma, yes. Motion carried.
thank you. And the superintendent's comments?
So, We're talking about federal funds, and there's a lot of it flowing around right now. Some of it has come to us directly, and so I had one trustee mention, we really should talk about how a review of where all that money's coming from, what's this, what's that. And I know you guys get updates from MTA, but it's hard to track all the different channels the funds are flowing through and how much we're getting. So in an upcoming meeting, we'll talk about that. And really the biggest piece from a decision standpoint, we have what is commonly referred to as the ARPA dollars, about $3.5 million that is now fully discretionary for the township to use for any legal governmental purpose. Let's be clear on that.
You've seen the reports, right, recently about how some people use that money?
I try to turn a blind eye to
Okay.
what others are doing.
It was not
because
good.
it can be appalling sometimes. But the federal government has made a rule change on that, and to our benefit, before they said that you could calculate revenue replacement. Warren went through the very complicated process of figuring out how much revenue we qualified as revenue replacement. As our last budget adjustment for last year, he included that as revenue, so that's been taken out of the ARPA piggy bank and put into our general fund. But now there's been a rule change that anything up to $10 million can be considered revenue replacement. At $3.5 million, that means our entire allotment can be considered revenue replacement, thus freeing it up for any, basically any general fund purpose. So we'll have to talk about how best to use that money to make an investment to the future and make those dollars go as far as possible. Another item we need to talk about, and probably very related to that topic, is our strategic plan. We held a session last fall. I need to get working on your input to me, and we'll need to meet again and talk through some of those ideas and finalize the strategic plan going forward. So in next regular board meeting, February 14, because we all love to be here together.
No,
I'm actually, it's Bill's favorite day. It's
that's it.
tax due date.
So you should bring the chocolate, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Tom will be back.
I will, but it's hard on you.
Tom will be back with us, but I'll actually be gone that meeting. So I send my love, but I won't be with you in person.
okay.
But Tom will be back with us, so that's all I have.
Thank you. Board members' comments? Kathy Postmus?
All set, thank you.
Kathy Beatty?
I'm excited about the sign that's going to be at Versluis Park. And I appreciate those who went and did all the bidding and finding it. So I think that's going to be a really nice addition, and I'm excited about that.
Bill?
Well, of course, February the 14th is coming up, and that's always a good day. And we'll be seeing you folks there at that time, but it's a busy day too, but it works out well for us. So
Thank you. Frank?
I'm good, thank you.
Jack?
I've reported the last 2 times on race, and I wanted to report again on the Rockford's Got Talent show. I don't know if you were aware of it, but it was held last Friday night, and the seating was social distancing, so the Rockford Auditorium seats 700, and we had 400 in residence, but there were 1,200 people that were online listening to it. The total raised was over $50,000. 50% goes to Rockford Area Community Endowment. The other 50% goes to the Rockford Library. Frank participated, and we appreciate his contribution with talent. We also had a vote by the people for who they would like as the favor. It didn't have to do with talent. It was more of a personality thing. And the Rockford Dance Company came away with $3,100 for that. So it was a great time. We're going to have this annually, and I encourage you to buy tickets next year. It's fun.
Good. Thank you for bringing us up to date. I don't think I have anything, I think I told you last time that the senior program is holding its own with its membership exceeding 900 members that have now each paid $12 apiece. That's $1 a month to be a member. And also, one of the rules has changed that all participants in programs that are hosted by the senior program, you have to be a member in order to attend. They may not cost anything, but you have to have a member. For example, tomorrow, there's an Apprentice for Life lecture, and it's free, but you have to be a member to attend and have a reservation. Any more discussions? Well, we hope Tom has had a wonderful vacation. We'll welcome him back, and the meeting's adjourned.